There is something in this world that has always made me believe I was the most special, something that could amaze the entire world and soothe every sorrow. I once thought it would stay with me for the rest of my life, unshakable and eternal. Yet one day, it vanished completely. In the days that followed, after losing what I was most proud of, I slowly began to feel an emptiness in my soul, a feeling that nothing could fill, a feeling that had no name. It was in that void that I came to understand the thing that had taken my emotions on a wild ride, joy to sadness, happiness to pain, was a kind of sound that could make a person completely lose themselves, my own singing voice. But now, all that remains are beautiful memories. Julie Andrews is now 89 years old, with silver hair, deep eyes, and a gaze that still shines with an inexplicable brilliance. She didn't appear to sing, but to awaken the memories of those days, the sorrowful stories behind the stage lights, the men who turned their backs on her, belittled her, and silently profited from her pain. They once said they loved her, that they trusted and would protect her. But today, she wants to tell you the whole truth, not to tear anyone down, but so that she, Julie Andrews, can rewrite the story of her life. And among those 5 men, there is one I despise the most. A man I can never forgive, not even in death. Julie Andrews, the angelic voice, a destiny heaven reclaimed, and a woman who finally chose to speak.
I could be a god. The audience within the film believes wholeheartedly.
Before naming each of the men who left unhealed scars in those memories, we must return to where it all began, before the lights, before the singing, before the dream was stained by lies and betrayal. Julie Andrews was born in 1935 in a small village in England, during wartime. She wasn't born to be a star, yet she possessed a perfect soprano voice that doctors called a gift from heaven. Her vocal control technique was considered the pinnacle of vocal artistry. At 19, Julie shook the Broadway stage with My Fair Lady and Camelot. At 29, she reached the height of fame with her role as Mary Poppins and won an Oscar. Just a year later, The Sound of Music turned her into the most beloved woman on the planet, a symbol of kindness, grace, and elegance. The world adored Julie Andrews for that voice, those eyes, and her presence that seemed to warm the air simply by entering the frame. But behind the stage lights was a tragedy kept hidden for decades. In 1997, a seemingly simple throat surgery stole her singing voice. She once said, "I can no longer sing, and I feel as though I've lost myself." The years that followed were filled with sorrow and depression, leading her to undergo therapy for the overwhelming sense of isolation, so deep she could no longer tell the difference between the stage and real life. Her husband, legendary director Blake Edwards, fell into a dependency on tranquilizers. They lived together in a lavish home adorned with awards on the walls, yet battled daily to not lose themselves, and not lose each other. When she returned to the screen as the Queen in The Princess Diaries, Julie still smiled, but behind that smile was a heart that had stopped singing. She had once been Mary Poppins, gentle Maria of Austria, a symbol of compassion, but even compassion has its limits. She said, "I will never forgive those who mistook kindness for weakness. Never forgive those who silently pushed me into the abyss and pretended not to see." And when Julie Andrews speaks, the world will know who took the light from her life. 5 men. 5 shadows. 5 verdicts. After more than 50 years of silence, the time has come for each name to be spoken. Tony Walton, the man who turned marriage into a stage, where every gesture was choreographed like a scene, and love became nothing more than a spotlight cast upon fading makeup. Not everyone who betrays you does so with harsh words or cruel acts. Some betray you in silence, with a gentle kiss goodnight, then leave you to wake alone the next morning, cradling a trust already cracked. Tony was her first love, the one who knew Julie when she was just starting out, the first to understand the backstage pressure and the loneliness beneath the spotlight. Julie met him in 1954, when both were young and had nothing but ambition and dreams. They married in 1959 in a modest wedding and had a daughter named Emma. Tony was a gifted stage designer who frequently collaborated on the big projects Julie took on. They were once a team. But no stage is wide enough for 2 growing egos headed in different directions. In 1965, while Julie was filming The Sound of Music, she was worn out, pregnant, exhausted by the pressure from the production and the media. Meanwhile, Tony was living a parallel life in New York, where wine-soaked parties and secret affairs gradually replaced late-night scriptwriting. Julie stayed silent when she discovered Tony's infidelity, believing it was just a moment of weakness. But then she uncovered contracts signed behind her back, investment projects under his name built on her reputation, and hidden earnings, as if she were merely a brand to be exploited. When all trust in her husband was gone and she brought up divorce, Julie never expected the man she once shared a bed with to become so cold and calculating. Tony threatened to fight for custody of their daughter and demanded a share of the royalties from Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music. The man who once whispered love to her backstage now sat across from her in a lawyer's office, printing out her earnings as if pricing out a product. Julie didn't resent Tony for his betrayal, but for using love as a mask for manipulation, only to turn his back on her when it no longer served him. Tony Walton, the man who once promised never to hurt her, walked away without hesitation, leaving her to sweep up a dream shattered into pieces that could never be put back together. The second man, Ted Andrews, the one who killed a childhood with a single touch, then carried on as if he had done nothing wrong. Not everyone who wears a suit, strums a guitar, and sings you to sleep truly loves you. Some use the title of father as a way to stay in your life, without ever fulfilling the role. Ted wasn't my biological father. He was my mother's husband, the man who entered my life after the war, when my family had fallen apart and I was too young to understand what danger looked like. He sang in bars, taught me to pronounce musical notes, took me to performances, and introduced me to the world with the polished smile of a model stepfather. But he never saw me as a child who needed protection. He touched me for the first time when I was just 9 years old. I didn't understand what was happening. I only remember the tightness in my chest and a fear I couldn't put into words. I used to think it was my fault, that I had misunderstood, that I believed he treated me like his own and would protect me, so I trusted him. Because my mother never saw anything, he kept smiling, kept playing the role of the devoted father. I didn't tell anyone for years, because I still had to stand beside him on stage, still had to thank him in speeches, and still had to call him Daddy in front of others. Some things, when hidden long enough, make you fear no one will believe you if you speak up. So I learned to stay silent, to endure, to build a perfect mask so no one would ever suspect. And Ted, the man who made me call him father, never once apologized, as if what he did to me back then was normal. I don't hate Ted for what he did. I hate him for never valuing me, never once saying he knew he was wrong. He lived as if I should be thankful to him. And when he died, I stood for a long time looking at the place where he lay, not with sadness or rage, just to make sure he would never have the chance to do that to anyone else again. The third man was different. He didn't disappear. He stood in the spotlight, smiling as he destroyed me with a false compliment. The third man, Walt Disney, the one who turned a voice into legend, then locked it inside a golden cage with no way out. Walt Disney, the man who brought Julie Andrews to Hollywood. The man who gave her the role of a lifetime. The man who once called her voice a gift from heaven. But behind those compliments were the glittering walls of a prison. In 1964, Disney personally called Julie to offer her the role of Mary Poppins, even though she had never acted in a film before. The movie became a massive success. Julie won an Oscar. But immediately afterward, Walt demanded she sign a 7-year exclusive contract under the condition that she maintain a pristine image and could not accept any other roles without Disney's approval. I thought I had just been set free. But in reality, I had just stepped into a gilded cage. When Julie was cast in The Sound of Music, Disney was furious, claiming it was a competing image, a replica of Poppins. He sent a formal letter to Fox, threatening to cut scenes unless Disney had input on costumes and the storyline, even though Julie's contract with him had already ended. He once called me a real-life fairy. But when I wanted to grow up, to become someone else, he used contracts to trap me forever in the body of a child. I'm grateful to Walt for Mary Poppins. But I resent him for turning me into a character, not an artist. Because my image was in his hands, I lost at least 5 years of my life trying to reclaim myself. The fourth man, he didn't need to shout, didn't need to insult. All he had to do was clap, smile, and let all of America know that the goddess Julie Andrews had gone silent. And that alone was enough to humiliate. That day, Julie was making her first public appearance after the failed vocal cord surgery. She stepped onto the stage to deliver a short speech, not to sing. Bryce, the polished television host, didn't invite her to perform. Instead, he gently praised her. Thank you for your voice, light as morning dew, better suited for stillness than for cathedrals. That sentence drew polite, mocking laughter from the entire room, refined, but deeply humiliating. Bryce called it a tribute, a celebration of lyrical depth over vocal brilliance. But to Julie, those words were a cold blade. He didn't knock me down. He simply marked the moment I was no longer divine. And that was the cruelest blow of all. The world watched that crystal clear moment, but few knew that right after the speech, Julie quietly left the event. She continued to lose ground in the entertainment world. I'm not ashamed of losing my voice. I'm ashamed that people can mention it, so easily, in front of millions, as if I should disappear. Bryce didn't have to expose me. He just needed to powder me up, then cast me under the wrong kind of light. Bryce Bellamy, the man who gently patted my back with kindness, while removing the final mask of softness I had left. But the next man was far more ruthless. He didn't say a word. Just one click. A short email. And Julie's career nearly ended. The fifth man, Mike Carter. Michael Carter brought Julie Andrews back to the Broadway stage, but not to honor her. He exploited the brands of Mary Poppins and Maria, dragged her back into the spotlight, and turned her into a voice echoing from a speaker. In 2001, after losing her voice, Julie returned to Broadway in a new play written by Mike Carter, based on her own life. The show was marketed as emotional and bold, but hidden within was a script full of lines that reopened old wounds, not just dialogue, but emotional traps, designed to manipulate the audience's sympathy, to make them love her and pity her, as if she were a living relic. During a rehearsal, Mike said, "The queen of the stage tonight, yet maybe still stuck in her memories. We want the audience to feel like they're watching a documentary." That line cut Julie deeply. You turned me into a subject, not a human being. I've lived with pain my whole life, but I will not stand on a stage just for someone else to direct my tears. Mike didn't humiliate me. He turned me into an emotional product, peeled apart, framed scene by scene, as if I were no longer a flesh and blood woman. I'm not telling this story to be pitied. I'm telling it to be heard. If you've ever stayed silent while hurting, ever smiled just to keep the peace, then this story is for you. Leave one word, "I understand." And if you believe this truth deserves to be shared, hit like and subscribe to the channel.